Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? Good, good. As Bill said, I'm Eric Scott. This is my wife, Anna. We both grew up here, born and raised in St. Petersburg, so that makes us one of the few. I want to thank Bill and the members of SUAC for asking us to come and do the presentation tonight. Tell you a little bit about us, our interests, and how we met Bill a few years ago. We got together with the Gaia's Garden Permaculture Study Group, and I believe we had the very first meeting was at Bill's house, and the second one was at ours, and it was really interesting. Kind of permaculture to us kind of tied everything together. Everything we were looking to do, always were interested in being self-sustaining. Being conscious of your actions and things that you do, concerned about food because we had a son with food allergies and that kind of thing, and it really kind of tied everything together. We did a thing in 2011. This was called our 12 months of change, and usually what we do is every year we get together. As a family, we do our New Year's resolutions, and we had started doing. You know what? We're going to pick one month, and we're going to do something. We're going to stick with it. And 1 month we picked was local only shopping, and that completely turned the light off for us. It was, where are you going to get your gas? No chain stores. Can't go to Home Depot. Can't go to Publix. Who are the mom and pop shops? Who are the people that can get you the stuff you need in the event that's all you had? That completely opened our eyes. So the next year we thought, okay, let's do something a little crazy. What we'll do is we'll list some things, and then we'll pick one thing a month, and we will do that for an entire year, and we wrote a blog about it. So kind of crazy things like no electricity. We shut off all the power in our house with the exception of one item, the refrigerator. So we literally shut off all the circuit breakers with the exception of that one. No processed foods, which was the food that we either obtained, purchased, traded for, whatever. There was no more than 2 steps from field to face. So no processing whatsoever. What were some more?
No transportation, so we biked or bused or walked. No money.
No.
That was interesting. We spent a whole month where we didn't spend anything. We prepaid our bills and then we bartered or went without or whatever for the rest of the month. All sorts of crazy stuff. So anyhow, we did 12 months, but that's kind of the things we like to do to just delve into some of the morals that we have to make sure that our days and our daily actions match what we want to be and who we want to be and how we want to live our lives. So we're in historic Kenwood, and if you're familiar with Kenwood at all, it's a little bit challenging to get accepted with chickens and different landscapes there, but
beekeeping's fun.
Things have gone over well. We've had chickens there for 7 years. Honeybees for several years until we recently moved those to a larger piece of property. And that's my experience with chickens. Eric grew up helping his grandfather with Spanish game fowl.
Yeah, he used to raise Spanish game cocks years ago.
So that's our experience. So he came to it with a little of experience, and then the chickens we kind of just went for, and that really was a big changing point in kind of stepping into that lifestyle, the 12 months that we wanted to get a little bit more self-sufficient. It made us realize that even though we were in a city setting, we could think outside of that box and we could behave differently. So we consider that our gateway step. Once we had chickens, we're like, well, we can have chickens, we can have bees. If we can have bees, we can grow our own food. And it made us kind of sassy as to what we felt we could accomplish.
All right, well, so to start, we just kind of asked the question, okay, we want to keep chickens in the city. Is it legal? Fortunately here in St. Petersburg, it absolutely is. There's no limit on what you can keep. You just need to be a good neighbor. You can keep ducks, you can keep turkeys, you can keep chickens, all fowl are on the table. You just need to be a good owner. Keep the smells down, watch the rats. You need to be aware of noise, your noise impacts, those kind of things. So here in St. Pete, it's fantastic. Now, if you're in unincorporated Pinellas County, you've got a total of 4 birds. That's all you can have. Tampa just did it as well. So it's a very limiting factor. The only thing you need to take into account here in the city of St. Petersburg is you need to ask all your neighbors within 100 feet of your property if they have a problem with it, if they have an issue with it. And you need to get that written and you keep it. City doesn't want it. They just want to know you got something in the event they have a complaint and they got to come to your house. So you hold on to that. And generally, you can kind of backdoor it. I'm telling you to do it the right way, but if you get birds, you get eggs, it's really kind of nice to go over to your neighbor and say, hey, here's some eggs. These come from my chickens. You didn't even know I had chickens. So you mind if I keep them? It breaks ice a little bit. So yeah, your chickens need to be contained on your property. We actually have there's a Kenwood chicken keeping club, and we have a guy, it's a riot. He walks out like a shepherd with his chickens. Every day he opens his front, or his gate in the back, walks them out down the street, and he's got a stick. And his chickens forage and they kick and they do their thing, and every night he runs them right back in. It's funny. It's really funny. And then, at Kenwood, we do the bungalow tours every year. And actually, I think it was last year.
Yeah, they did a chicken coop tour.
They did a chicken coop tour. So, I mean, it sounds goofy, but people really put a lot of effort into making these coops. I mean, we have a neighbor that built one just like an old craftsman-style bungalow. So there's a lot involved.
But I think that's a good bridge because a lot of people are concerned with presentation. How is it going to affect your neighbors? So they made it very stylized. It matched the neighborhood. It matched the feel of what's going on there. So that was a good gateway. We're a little bit more low-key in our yard. We're more about function. But, if you can build a craftsman coop, then right on. So.
The other big issue is roosters. Roosters are considered a nuisance animal. The minute they crow, somebody's on the phone, I guarantee it. So if you're going to consider chickens, consider that option, or consider roosters not an option. For any individuals who are from Gulfport, they passed the rule, you're good with chickens down there. This was 2 years old with the chickens. You need to keep coops in the backyard. They cannot be out front at all, or on the side where people can see them. That's the only difference. And again, roosters are not allowed in Gulfport.
If you're somewhere and you're not allowed to have chickens, there's advocacy groups. You can get chickens. I think unincorporated county, I'm not sure if they're finally got that Clearwater, I think a year or so ago, had to go through all of the changing of the legislation to allow chickens. So if you're somewhere that it's a problem, salemchickens.com is an interesting place to go because they go through a step-by-step process of how to approach your community leaders and bring this up and hopefully have a successful ploy to get your chickens allowed.
You don't have to make it up. They did it.
Yeah.
They can walk you through the process.
And it's very well done. It's a very well done program. So we approach chickens from a permaculture point of view. Like Eric said, we met Bill and we kind of had an aha moment with permaculture that it just makes sense because it's a really efficient way of thinking about things. So we have it as an effective and efficient system to maximize production by viewing systems as a whole. So when we think about permaculture and chickens, we think about, okay, what do we have to give and what are we going to get? And so as we take a look at all of those things piece by piece, hopefully it will help you understand if that's something you want to do or not. Does anybody in here have chickens already?
Good. How long have you had them? 3. Oh, good.
How long have you guys had?
2 days.
Good.
Well, we hesitated for a long time because we have a tiny, tiny yard. We have German Shepherds, and we just didn't know if it was going to work, and we finally just went for it. But this was a great way to just organize our thoughts on it. What are we going to get? What do they need? And how are we going to fit it into our lifestyle? I think that's another thing to consider. It gets really exciting to think, I'm going to grow my own food, I'm going to do all this and all that. But you need to scale it to your lifestyle. If you can't be around to take care of chickens, then you just need to be friends with somebody who has chickens. So, you know, what are the outputs? Well, if you're willing to harvest them, you can have meat. It's higher quality. It's what you're going to pay top dollar for in the markets. The eggs certainly are higher quality and again cost more at the markets. We very actively sell and trade our eggs. You can use the shells for crafts. You can crush the shells to make fertilizer for your garden, and then of course you can compost any of the waste. You're going to get some feathers, especially if you harvest your chickens, and again you can compost them and use those for crafts. I think later on we get to maybe 45 pounds of manure a year. We have it in there, but you're going to get a lot of manure and you got to deal with that. You're just going to bag it and throw it away, or you're going to use it for your garden.
Don't throw it away.
They're traded.
It's magic.
They till a lot, they go and dig, so you have to think about that in your landscape. Is that something you want? Can you put that to use where maybe you're going to move them to an area where they're going to weed up a garden for you? I'm a teacher at Gibbs High School and we have a garden there. And I have some interesting conversations with my principal where I bring my chickens into the garden. I'm like, we have to clean the garden, I have to bring the chickens. And whenever I get a new principal, I'm like, oh, I gotta go have this conversation again and convince them to let me bring my chickens in to clean up the garden, but I usually get them to do it. Bug control, they do a great job of breaking the life cycle of bugs if you let them out to come and clean up all the little bugs and the grubs and things for you, so that's gonna help if you're a gardener or just to keep pests down. If you're, compost processing. In the city, I know we used to compost a lot in the yard, and now between worm bins, which are nice and contained and efficient, and the chickens, we don't do that a lot. We had gotten some problems with rats coming into the yard. And to avoid that, we just give our scraps to the chickens and the worms. They do all the work for us, and then we get eggs out of the deal too, so it's a very efficient composting system.
It's a lot quicker.
If you were up north, we've seen some farms where they use the chickens to actually heat greenhouses, the body warmth from the chickens. And then a lot of people have them as pets. We have, like I said, the neighbor who, walks his chickens out, and then we have another neighbor, she carries her chickens around. They're very amusing. They can jump about this high. Have you seen yours jump yet?
Yes.
They're hysterical, aren't they?
Yeah, we had to put a top on there because one of them keeps trying to jump out.
Oh yeah.
So they really do have personalities, and I didn't believe it. I hadn't been around birds, but we got them, and they do. They have distinct personalities. We had one who would chase my mom's chihuahua around. She was a bully chicken, and then we have others who are very sweet. So they really do become like pets. So you have to weigh that against your desire to maybe harvest
You can
them
put your
eventually.
TV away. Put it away.
Chicken TV.
Because they're a blast to watch. All right, and talking about inputs, these are the things that you need to provide for your birds. You need to think about storing the food, your layer mash, scratch, Cheerios, oatmeal.
That's the goodies I feed them, Cheerios and oatmeal.
Every morning, and they fuss if they don't get them. They're not dumb animals.
They
They're smart.
They like their goodies.
The things that you grow in your yard, you can grow food for your chickens, and you should. It's better for them. They love to forage. And they will prefer to eat greens over just about. The only thing that they like better is bugs, but they will forage and eat every green thing you got in your yard. So we've grown every kind of green you can think of for the birds. Mustard greens they love, collards. We grow loofah. They love to eat the leaves on the loofah, and flowers. They love. We have a tababuya tree in the front yard. It's the neighbor's tree, but these beautiful, beautiful purple flowers, and they eat them like candy. Moringa. They love moringa. Wood sorrel, clover, Spanish needle, purslane. And then the other thing we used to do in the dirt of the summer, I still do it, in the dirt of the summer, I take grass seed and I make a little cage that goes into their chicken run. And I'll scratch up the dirt, throw the grass seed in it, cover it up. 3 days, you've got grass for them to eat. You take that, scratch again, put some more seed, drop it down, now they got fresh grass to eat. So you can always keep them in something. The compost, again, there's not a more efficient machine to deal with your kitchen scraps and chickens. They eat it all. They completely eat it all. Bug bucket. was something she has done a lot of.
Well, I took a cat litter bucket, cut the bottom out of it, stuck it in the ground. I've got some posts to hold it there. And this is probably the only really kind of composting I do. I put soft scraps that are going to break down really fast, and it attracts something called a black soldier fly. So they come, they look like not like a wasp. They don't, cause
Almost like a solitary bee.
They do look a cross between a wasp and a bee, but they don't look crusty. Wasps look mean, but they don't look mean. Anyhow, they come, they lay their eggs in there, and they get these nice little grubs. So about, I don't know, once a week, I take that bucket and just lift it off the ground. The girls come through, eat the grubs, scratch all that into compost. I can take that and pretty much put it straight into the garden because it's really shredded down and broken down between the girls scratching it and the larva being in there. And then I just put the bucket back, and then I fill it up for about another week, and then let that process start again. And they love bugs and larvae and any that rich protein treats. So that's very low tech. There's high tech ways. If you go on YouTube, soldier fly buckets, that there's tunnels and channels, and I don't even know. A bucket with a hole in the bottom would work for me, and you don't have to worry about it. Nothing else is going to get in there, and you don't put things that are going to be smelly. So there's no other problems, with things being yucky or gross. So
Grazing. They love to get in and kick. So they'll constantly turn things in your garden for you. Like I say, or like Anna said, they will jump this high. So you can count on anything this high or lower in your garden. If you're not careful, it'll be gone. They'll decimate it.
At the Faith House, we grew canaf for them in their run, and they've learned to push over 8-foot plants.
they're
So
smart.
they could get the full, after
Really?
they finish jumping up to get the
Clear.
weeds, they learn to push the plants over.
Wow.
They will find a way to eat. They do that.
Absolutely.
Water, providing water for them. Rainwater catchment is an excellent way to provide water for them. We have a pump in a well, and I have an automated, it's a homegrown automated system that we use to water them. The reservoir itself is a 5-gallon bucket, and I just popped the hole in it, ran a water line to it, and I use a toilet flush valve. And, as they drink, it drops down below, fills back up to that level. You're right as rain. You don't have to worry about anything.
Okay, so if you're thinking about getting them, you need to think about shelter. And you want them off the ground to roost, to go to sleep. You want a covered run, so you want a little building for them to sleep in, but then you might want a contained place for them to run. We have a lot of gardens in the backyard, so I don't want them out there digging everything up. So they have a little space, but it's really important to have it covered because of the hawks and things like that who would like to snack on your chickens. They need private nesting boxes. They like nice little areas that are a little bit dark. We've come to realize that for nesting materials, we like to use pine needles, rosemary. I'll trim some mugwort or some smelly herbs. So rosemary, mugwort, tobacco leaves would work because they repel pests. Cedar shavings every once in a while we'll do. We've had issues with hay, and we'll get into chicken mites a little bit later. But we've found that some of these other more pungent nesting materials are better to keep the bugs out. And then what we have over our chicken run, which is wire, we've grown grapevines so that in the winter the light comes through, and in the summer they get shade. And then we have a little chicken pool in there during the summer. They like to get their little feet wet, so we just have a little, it's just like a little base for a plant. It's nothing fancy, but they will get in there and kind of romp around, and they do enjoy cooling off. I mean, just like anybody else, especially in the heat of summer, that's important to make sure they have a spot to cool off.
All right, grit. This is really, really important. Chicken don't have teeth. They use a gizzard in order to masticate, to chew. And oyster shell is really good because we can just go out to Fort DeSoto and get it. Don't have to pay anybody for it. Bring it home, smack it with a hammer, knock it down where they can actually eat it, put it in with their feet. So it provides grit for them, and it also gives them calcium to keep their eggshells good and strong. Dust, yes. As much as they will eat. They'll take what they want. So generally we'll take one trip. Usually it's like one trip a year to the fort. And I'll bring home a block of old busted up dead oyster shell, and take it home, smack it with a hammer, and throw it in with their feed. They love to dust. They love to have dust baths. That's to keep the mites down. And what we do is we provide a little area, it's a little sandbox for them, just regular sand, and we mix diatomaceous earth with it. Everybody know what diatomaceous earth is, right? It's diatoms, little plankton, zooplankton exoskeletons, like microscopic sand spurs. And it'll stick the exoskeleton of an insect and bleed them out.
Have your chickens taken a dust bath yet?
No, they're still like.
Oh, they're little guys.
Because as soon as they get big, you're gonna look out one day and they're gonna be like, in the yard, you're gonna think they're dead, but they're really just taking a dust bath. So I'm gonna warn you now, because I about had a heart attack. I was like, oh my God. But that's because they dig like a little hole in the sand and they roll to get that up in their feathers, and it's a maintenance thing. But it's hysterical if you don't know the first time is traumatizing.
Do you have a supplier for your bees? Pet stores, or where do you get it from?
Pet stores for diatomaceous earth.
Oh.
I know we were just at Pet Food Warehouse on 62nd between 16th maybe, off the corner of 16th.
Yeah.
And they have big bags of it. Most of the pet stores have it. There's a pool grade.
Don't use it.
Which it's better to use the food grade for your grills.
Pool
Yeah.
grade has fiberglass in it. Yeah, that's not what you want to use. You need to use a food grade diatomaceous earth. Daily maintenance, food and water check. You got to be on them. Always provide food, especially water, especially here. If you get hot, imagine wearing a feathered coat. It gets hot. And you'll see them. I mean, they'll pant, they'll open up their wings, drop their wings, and really open up and try to get some air. And chicken friends, they're a social critter. They need friends. You need to have something around for them.
Okay, so just the life cycle of a chicken. The baby chicks. Where did you guys get your chicks from?
Animal house?
Animal House. Okay, so a lot of the pet stores are carrying them now, which is really cool. You can purchase them and have them shipped to you. Sometimes when you get the babies, if you order them online, which is kind of fun though to get something live in the mail, it's kind of groovy. But sometimes there's a minimum amount and they're not always sexed correctly, so then you might get stuck with some roosters. And we do have a contact for a lady who does chicken rescue at the end. If you want to jot that down just in case. We actually just got a call with a friend who had a rooster and they said, do you want to eat it, or do you know who will take it? And there's a lady in Largo that what she does is she takes them and then matches them up with 4-H students who want to get through that process of raising a chicken. But that's an issue. So if you get them locally, which the same lady who does the 4-H chicken, she'll also sell chickens or fertilize eggs. Sometimes they can be healthier, and then they've had a little bit more time to interact with, with other chickens. But they're going to need a heat source until they're about 8 weeks old. They're going to have starter feed until they're about 6 months, and then they definitely need a safe space. And then keep an eye on them for health issues. One thing that can pop up with babies is something called pasty butt. Where
It's real
just
common.
Their little bottom gets all crusty, and if it clogs up, they literally can't eliminate it, and it can make them sick, and it can kill them. So you just, like any baby, you need to keep an eye on them. And just another aside on the babies, we've had some friends that had them out in the yard, and babies are very attractive to hawks and things like that, so you want to keep a good eye on them. Our friends had some little babies in a cage, and a hawk dug under the cage, killed all the babies, and then the hawk was stuck there. So it's just something to think about, to keep on. If they're going to be out, keep an eye on them, make sure they're really secure.
Everything loves to eat chicken. I love chicken. Everything loves to eat chicken. They'll find a way to get them. Now, hens. Moving once your biddies have grown, you need to switch their food. They need a different diet. It'll provide the necessary nutrients that they need for egg production. They'll begin to lay in and around 6 months, and the laying will taper off about 3 years. So a good layer breed will produce 1 egg about every 26 hours, some more, some less. Then birds have about a 5 to 8 year lifespan. They need safe and private nesting boxes, usually. Our girls are a little crazy. Everybody wants to lay an egg in the same box. And we'll have 2 and 3 birds in the same box. trying to
all
nuzzle down to
jammed
get
in
it
there,
done.
yeah. And you know, it's something to consider that if you're gonna have the chickens, and they stop laying eggs after 5 years, but they might live another 3, just to make sure that you take that into consideration, just like any animal that you would care for, that there's a life cycle and it's not always gonna be productive, and what are you gonna do at that point? You know, are you willing to just have your little old grandma chicken hanging out in the yard, or make a plan for her? So, as far as eggs go, the shell colors can vary, and they're a ton of fun to get some of the chickens that lay the different colored eggs. We have girls that lay brown and some that lay like the blue-green, and that freaks people out all the time. I love to give people eggs because they're like, oh my God, what does it look like on the inside? But they look just the same on the inside. It's a great source of protein if you're trying to cut your budget down and grow a lot of your own food, produce a lot of your own protein. That's a great source. We typically will wipe our eggs down a little, but we keep them out. I usually don't have to refrigerate them at all because we eat them pretty quick. There's a bloom that's naturally on the shell that protects any sort of bacteria and things from getting into the egg. If you were going to keep them a long time, or if of course they're dirty, you want to wash it, but when you wash the egg, you wash that bloom off. So oftentimes the eggs that come to you in the grocery store, they've been washed, but then they've had like an oil or something then reapplied to protect the shell from any sort of, stuff getting in there. They can keep fresh for about 6 weeks. If I don't use mine within a week, I pop them in the fridge, but otherwise I just keep them on the counter and we roll right through them. And you can even freeze eggs for up to a year, so they're a good storage food. And just chicken basics, if you have just girls, you don't have to have a rooster to get eggs. Just your girls will, at a certain maturity, will start to lay, but they lay unfertile eggs. If you have a boy, a rooster in with them, you get fertile eggs. There's some debate. Some people think there's better qualities to the fertile to unfertile. Mostly the data says that they're not really any more nutritious, just the fresher the egg, the better. The older it gets, the more it starts to lose its mojo. And if you do have fresh eggs, and you go to make hard-boiled eggs, they're a little bit different to work with, so that's something to keep in mind. You can keep them at room temperature to accelerate it, or you want to actually handle them a little bit differently, otherwise they just kind of shred because they're so fresh.
All right, cloudiness in the white is carbon dioxide that hasn't had time to escape the egg. So it's not that your egg is bad, especially if it's a fresh one. Yellow or green cast indicates levels of riboflavin in the egg. Blood spots, which are common, they are safe to eat. It's not an issue, but it occurs during the development of the egg. And the white stingy stuff is called chalazae. It is edible, and it actually is what keeps the yolk centered in the egg. Probably more than you ever want to know about an egg.
Well, sometimes when you get chickens, when you crack that egg, you're like, sometimes you'll get double yolks. When your girls first start to lay, their eggs might be like a ping pong. They might be like that big. So it takes a while for them to regulate out. Then they get to normal egg size usually, but there's a lot of variation. And if you see a blood spot, you think, is there something wrong? Can I eat this egg? Is there something wrong with my chicken? So there are a few things, just to know not to worry about.
Roosters. If you are in a place where you can have roosters, it's excellent for the flock. It actually keeps the pecking order down. You will see if you have some girls now and you decide in 6-8 months you want to add another one to it, it's always a very, very traumatic experience. They will establish a pecking order, and usually the lone single lady will get beat down a little bit. So it's really hard to introduce a new bird to a flock. Having a rooster will help to mitigate that. Rooster controls it. You are also one of my ladies, and he keeps it right. Again, like she said, they are not necessary for egg production. Chicken's going to lay an egg. And again, the males are not allowed into city limits, and they can be aggressive too. I mean, they can be protective and or overprotective. I've had many a battle with a bird. They'll kick you, and you gotta set them right. But they actually, and it's always when you turn your back. You'd be walking across the field, and before you know it, he's on you. It's funny.
Yeah, 45 pounds of manure a year per hen. So that's something to plan on. Once again, if you're thinking about it, what are you going to do with that? It's a great fertilizer when it's moist. It's got a 2-2-1. Dry, it's a 5-3-2 as far as the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. You can make tea out of it by putting it in an old pillowcase, 3/4 of a pillowcase in a garbage can full of water, let it kind of mojo down for about 3 weeks, and then put it out on your garden. If you're going to compost it, you want to blend that in to somewhere where you're not going to be planting right away, because fresh it's too intense and it can really damage some plants.
Varieties of chickens. If you're looking just for egg layers, Leghorns are the best egg-laying hen, bar none. That's the industrial bird. That's the same variety that they use in the industry to lay eggs. If you're out, you've got your own Leghorns and you're doing it right, there's no issue with the health of the eggs. Just it's a prolific layer. An egg a day. They do about 320 eggs a year is what they can average. So, even there's a natural down cycle in the cold of winter and in the very mean part of summer, the egg laying will usually knock off. These girls just keep rocking right through it. Rhode Island Reds, a very, very hardy breed. Our Rhode Island Reds were a little bit skittish. They tend to be a little bit higher strung. Wyandottes, real good temperament. And Orpingtons as well. All good, excellent egg layers. And now as far as meat, if you want to be raising them for meat, you need to look at your Plymouth Rocks, big meaty bird, big heavy bird, and the Cornish. The Cornish is the root stock that was used to genetically design the big double-breasted birds that you see in the supermarket. All right, the ones that you get in the supermarket with breast meat that thick, that ain't real. That's made up. That's
another conversation.
Yeah, another conversation.
That's a whole nother topic.
But a traditional Cornish that has that big, thick, meaty thighs and breast meat that you're looking for. Your best bet, if you're looking for both egg production and meat production, is to stick with the Rhode Island Reds, Orpingtons, Americanas. Those are the Easter eggers. That's your green egg-laying chickens, and your Plymouth Rocks. And the best chickens for city folk, just getting started into it, Buff Orpingtons, very, very sweet disposition. Rhode Island Reds, a little bit more hyper. Plymouth Rocks, beautiful birds, large breed, and the Americanas. Shelter requirements.
So that's me. Shelter
That's you.
Requirements. You need to have about 4 square foot per chicken. So you want to make sure that you have space. We have a tiny little space, and again, it was one of the things that kept us. We're like, we should have chickens. We're going to have to move. But we managed to squeeze in a space between a privacy fence and the garage, and it worked out perfectly. It was actually kind of wasted space that now is super productive. But you want 4 square foot per chicken. You need it safe from predators. You want it to be easy to clean. You're going to be in there at least once a week cleaning it out, which is 15 minutes of scooping, bagging, or doing whatever you're doing. You want to be able to get to your eggs every day. You need ventilation to keep it heated in the winter and cool in the summer, and then decide if you're going to let your girls get out and be mobile at all, or if you want to do, some people have chicken tractors where they can actually move the chickens around the yard. Here in the city, a lot of yards are small, so you're kind of limited, but that's an option to consider where you want them to be and if there's anything else in the yard that they can do for you.
Food and water. Make sure you check it and change it daily. You need to keep your food off the ground to keep it from being contaminated by little buggies in the dirt, that kind of thing. If they eat it, you can end up with worms and all kinds of other things, just like dogs. And it keeps rats down. Most people actually hang their feeder off of something high enough where a rat can't jump up to it, and you can also fix a plate above it where, just like a squirrel, like you do the squirrel plate on top of a bird feeder, where the rats can't climb down and over and around it. Make sure you keep your food covered at night, close it up. Avoid feeding wet grains, moldy fruit, or moldy bread. Again, chickens don't do like we do, all right? Whenever they eat, it goes into their crop. If you're growing mold, you're blooming mold, they can get sick from that, all right? So make sure it's not, and if you take moldy food out to them, they will eat around it. They won't eat it.
And just think about placement in your yard. We added noise to this because we have a neighbor down the road who they built this awesome chicken coop and then they decided to move it. It wasn't the right space and they moved it right underneath their bedroom window. And then they decided that maybe that wasn't the place to have the chickens because even though they're not incredibly loud, they do start to make noise in the morning. If my girls see me come out the door and they're ready for their Cheerios, they start to carry on a little bit because they just, like I said, they have personality. So you want to consider where in the yard is not going to disturb your neighbors, it's not going to disturb you. Convenience to get to them, to check them and clean them, to make sure that they have access to shade and a water source. Think about your neighbors, make sure that you're not going to put them in a place that's going to cause a problem. In interaction with pets, we had to work around our 2 German Shepherds to get them into the yard, and now everybody's happy and lives, together well, but it's an adjustment period. And then, is there anything else that you can get out of the chicken coop? We grow grapes up along the chicken coop now, so it actually gave me a space to grow something that I didn't have vertical space to grow before. And do you want them to maybe do garden prep for you where they're going to get out and till, or maybe you can have a little coop here for a year or 2 and then you switch it to the other side of the yard and plant your garden there because you've got this great soil that's built up over a couple of years.
All right, disease and health issues. Fowl pox, it's not a joke, they get chicken pox. It's carried by mosquitoes. And your chickens can be inoculated by it. It's not lethal, it will not kill them unless you already have a compromised immune system in a bird. But they do break out with the little scabs just like you had whenever you get chicken pox. The big concern that you have is because they have a high amount of skin surface inside of their mouth, and they will get scabs inside their mouth and it can close up their throat. It can cause breathing issues and that kind of thing. What do? Neosporin, any kind of antibiotic, petroleum jelly type cream, you can rub that on the scabs and in around on the sides of their mouth, in the soft sides of the mouth, and that will help keep that from becoming real hard scabbed and a problem for them. Lice and mites. These are both items that are transferred from bird to bird. Doesn't necessarily have to be a chicken. If you got crows that come into your chicken run, they can bring bird, lice, mites, those kind of things into your chicken yard. They're going to get them. It's going to happen. You can use your diatomaceous earth, and there's a couple ways that you can do it, and it's all funny. Make sure you have a video camera when you do it. You can take the diatomaceous earth, grab your bird, grab them by the legs, upside down. You'll see the wings will open up, and you're actually looking down on the feathers. You can fluff the feathers up and get into the skin. Take handfuls of diatomaceous earth and just kind of sprinkle it around. But it's extremely important that you wear a mask when you do it. Get a dust mask, because diatomaceous earth, like I say, they're like little tiny microscopic sand spurs. It can cause cancer. If you breathe it in, it's carcinogen. All right? Anyhow, you can sprinkle it around, dust them. That's one way. Another way is to put some diatomaceous earth in a garbage bag. Poke a hole down in the bottom of the garbage bag, stick your bird in. It's fun. It's like shake and bake. So stick them down in there, pull their head out, do a little maraca action.
I think the chickens think it's fun. I'm just saying.
I have a blast with it. You can actually bathe them with a flea shampoo, with a pyrethrin or pyrethrin-based pet shampoo. And believe it or not, there's chicken shows, and over at the fair, people will bathe their chickens before they take them to the fair. I don't do it, but you can do it.
I'm sorry?
How do you pay them?
You actually you can hold. You have to hold them down into the water, but you can make a sudsy bath for them, warm bath they like, and then another rinse bucket. But that's it.
It's
Lather
all
them
an
up.
adventure.
Right. Also, the other thing is to make sure that you keep clean bedding. If you do end up with lice or mites, you need to be changing out your bedding consistently. This is where the hay and straw conversation came in. A lot of people think you put hay in a nesting box. Well, that's not really the best thing to do it. Lice will stay. They like that substrate to stay in for some reason. So get something, cedar shavings are the best, no bug like cedar. It's really good for them. So we've treated it with cedar oil, with cedar shavings, and diatomaceous earth, and that knocked them out in a week.
And just to go into the lice and mites a little bit, the lice are going to accumulate around the feather where it connects to the skin. So you're going to see them, especially around the tail, you can see them. And the mites tend to be, there's leg mites that'll get up underneath the scales in the legs. So your girls usually have little scales that overlap like this, and if you start to see those scales pull up a little bit, it can be mites in those scales on the leg, and you can treat that with just like a Vaseline. It'll kind of smother the mites to get them out. But they look a little bit different. But any of these things you can just look right online, and there's a lot of graphic pictures.
Did you use any pyrethrin based sprays or anything like that to treat the area?
Yeah, you can. Because of our lifestyle, how we live, we tend to stay away from even though it's an organic, that's good. Other people do it with 7 dust. It works. I'm not going to touch that. No, but you can do it, definitely. Egg bound is another issue you have with hens. A lot of times a hen you'll notice her being very lethargic, looking sickly. Normally in your birds, you want to see good red combs and wattles. Whenever they get egg bound, you'll see them start to get a little bit pale. And you'll notice, if you notice you got one particular chicken that's not laying eggs consistently, she may be egg bound. You can pick up your bird and check the vent. A lot of times you'll see the egg right there at the vent. It's just stuck. It's lodged. There's a few things you can do for that. One is a warm bath, and literally it's the same thing we were talking about. It's just warm water. You set your bird down there, and we've done it for as much as 40 minutes with another one that was egg bound, and she just wouldn't pass it. And the worst case scenario you had to do it, you break the egg. But it can cause infection, sharp pieces of shell inside the vent that you have to make sure you get everything out, because it'll cut them, they can get infected, sepsis kind of thing. So you can use lubrication. Again, a warm bath in conjunction with, say, like KY jelly. If it freaks you out, put a little glove on, be a doctor for a day, and you can actually slip in the vent and pull the egg out.
Vent gleat is basically like a yeast infection in that area. And what you'll notice is there might be a little bit of a discharge coming from the vent, and the vent is where the egg comes out, and it's just under their tail feathers. But you can isolate the hens. Chickens love yogurt, so you can feed them yogurt, and that's a good thing to just give them as a goodie every once in a while anyhow. But that'll usually clear it up. There are other things you can do, but that typically has worked for us. West Nile virus is transferred by mosquitoes. We did some research on it, and basically it's nothing to be too concerned about. They do the test birds, and while it's a scary thing because it can be serious, there haven't been a lot of cases that have been documented where it's an issue. The avian flu, the same thing. Mostly keep healthy birds, and if you get a sick bird, we also have a name for a vet at the end of this. It's something else you got to consider. If it gets sick and you can't fix it, what are you going to do? Can you afford to take it to the vet? Before we got this, these are all the things that we went through. What are all the worst case scenarios before we commit to this animal? And then eggs and meat during treatment. We've had chickens with mites and lice and egg bound and gleat and all of these things, and chicken pox. And our feeling is that we don't eat the eggs, and of course we would never harvest a sick animal. Some people say it's okay to eat the eggs. Our personal thing is if the chicken's not feeling good, we're not going to eat it, and we just composted those eggs. So.
Predators, like I said before, everything loves to eat chicken, and they will. If you want to know what predators you have around, get a chicken. You'll find out. Hawks and owls, we have a plethora, and different varieties of hawks, and they all will eat your bird, with the exception of fish hawks. So make sure that you provide ample indoor roost or space for them to get out and away from a predator from the sky. If you have the opportunity and the ability, give your birds a run that's covered. That'll keep the incidence of hawks and owls down. What we've done, it's actually an 8-foot area along our garage. It's 20 feet long. So I just divide it in half and use 2 rolls of 4-foot poultry netting over the top of it, 6 foot high. So we've got privacy fence, our garage, a roof, and their door. So, and it completely keeps the birds out. Dogs and coyotes. Dogs and coyotes tend to have a lot of fun with chickens whenever they're killing them. Because they kill all of them, and then they'll take one and run away. So if you walk in and you see, and it happens, don't let it discourage you, because it happens. You want to try to predator-proof your cage, but predators got all night to figure out how to get into your chicken cage. They got all night to figure out what you did wrong. Cats, they tend to eat the little ones. Once a bird is big enough, once a chicken's big enough, you really don't have to worry about that. Raccoons are lethal. They have opposing thumbs and a brilliant brain, and they will find a way into your coop. Possums, another one, slow mover, but chickens, whenever they roost at night, they're in a complete stupor. You can actually do anything to a chicken at night. They won't move, they stay on their roost, and I've seen possums go take one, kill one, eat one, go back in, take another, kill it, eat it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then snakes. Of course, rat snakes are probably the number one thing you're going to see around here that's eating a little chicken or a chicken egg.
And we've had more issues with the raccoons and the possums, mostly the raccoons though.
Yeah.
Because they are very clever.
Oh, before we go there, there's one other thing I want to mention. I've talked a little bit about the color of your birds' wattles and combs. You want that good, vibrant red that lets you know that your bird is healthy, everything's going good for them. But annually, they'll go through a molt, right? So they will start dropping their feathers. They look ratty. They just look terrible. And they come into pin, what they call coming into pin. You have little pin feathers that come in underneath their old raggedy feathers. Well, it takes a huge amount of nutrition out of the bird's normal cycles to put on a whole new coat of feathers. And that's what they're doing. And you'll notice they get lethargic, they stop laying, it almost looks like they have a cold, is how they're moving. Slow and compact and tight, but that's what they're doing. They're shedding their feathers and growing new.
Question. Is that annually?
Annually.
And is it seasonal?
It can be seasonal. Normally our birds molt in winter for whatever reason. I don't know why, and I don't think that's natural. But the birds we've got right now, they molt in winter. And I would expect that would be more of a summer thing. If you think about the cycles, that's when you have the most food, and that's when it would do it, but that's when our birds do.
And then we just listed some reference sites, and we'd be happy to email these to you if you want. Backyardchickens.com is a great source. Urbanchickens.org and thecitychicken.com are a couple of websites that you can go to for information. And there's tons of chicken people. It's like a whole underground movement. You can find all sorts of stuff on chicken. A couple magazines, backyardpoultrymag.com. Hobby Farms has a chicken, specific chicken thing. And then there's a couple of great books, and I believe all of these, except maybe Sepp Holzer's Permaculture, are available from the library system here. The Guide to Raising Chickens, Gaia's Garden talks about having a garden and chickens. Sepp Holzer's Permaculture is a little bit, I don't know.
He does advanced systems.
Advanced systems, I guess that's the word. And then the Permaculture Garden is another book that might not be available from the library, but my personal favorite for city chickens is called Free Range Chicken Gardens, How to Create a Beautiful and Chicken-Friendly Yard. Because if you're here in the city, you might have kids that have to use that yard, you might have dogs or cats. You want it to look nice, and it really does have a lot of practical information on how to incorporate chickens into a lifestyle and a look that you want for your yard.
City chicken community. If you're new to it, you want to know about it, talk to people that have them. That's where you're going to learn what to do. So it creates relationships where you can ask questions and you can learn. Chicken swap harvest. This is something we're an advocate. I'm on the top of the food chain and I enjoy being there. I eat my chickens. I have them. Whenever they stop laying, we eat them. Some people have a problem with that. If you have chickens, you would like to eat chicken that was raised that way, but you don't want to do your own, you can bring your bird to me and I'll give you one of my birds. I'll dress it out, we'll swap out. You don't have to see it, you don't have to do it, you don't have to worry about thinking about eating your hen. It's an option. You can work these things out. Chicken sitters, who's going to take care of your birds when you're gone? People with chickens know what to do. Group purchases and sharing. You can save gas on shopping. You can go in and buy bulk food together. There's actually folks in Newport Richey that buy pallets of organic, no soy, no GMO chicken feed. And you can go in on the buyer's club with them. You can share your outputs and inputs. It's a way for you to get rid of unwanted manure if you're not gardening. And you can share your scraps.
Bayshore Veterinary Clinic here is local, and they will treat chickens. There's a couple of feed supplies, Park Feed Supply and Largo Feed Supply are both good sources. And then Neil Gordon, that's not listed, but it's here locally in St. Pete on, 13th Avenue, right across from the baseball field.
Right.
And then Fowl Mom, Sandy Martin, is in Largo, and she is the lady that sells fertilized eggs. She has chickens that you can go pick out, but she also will rehome your roosters. So if you get a chicken that you can't keep, or if you come up with one of your babies as a boy and you can't keep them, she will try to find a 4-H student who can take your chicken and raise it for you.
Oop.
And then a chicken check. So just a list
Cool.
of, stuff to think about if you're going to get chickens. Is it legal where you are? What do you want a chicken for? Is it for eggs, for meat, as a pet? What are you going to do when you get a billion eggs? We have 3 chickens. If everybody lays an egg every day, we get lots of eggs. So what are you going to do with those eggs? It's a great way to meet people. We actually have lived in the same neighborhood for 20 years, and there's a neighbor on the other side of the alley that we never really talked to. They came by and we started a great friendship with this whole chicken thing. And he's an avid fisherman, so we would trade eggs for fresh fish, which is a great deal. But you got to think about, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to start with babies? Are you going to go and get hens? What's going to happen? What are you going to do if you do get a rooster? How many do you need for your family? How are you going to feed them? Where are you going to locate the coop? What type of shelter? So this is just so you know, what are your neighbors going to think, and where's the coop going to be? Just some ideas to go through. And then I love to go out of town. Who's going to take care of those chickens for you? Because you got to get a chicken sitter. You can leave food and water out, but for the safety of chickens, you probably want somebody to check on them every day. You could do it if you wanted to, but you'd have to have a really secure environment. What's going to happen when they stop producing those eggs? Are you going to keep them as a pet? Are you going to harvest them? Are you going to try to find somebody to take them? And then can you afford it? And all the materials. What if they get sick and you've got to take them to the vet? And are their kids going to be around? They're more gentle breeds that are great for kids. And then what other pets do you have? And do you have time to check on them every day? Oh, and then this is just some permaculture stuff. The Gaia's Garden, the Steady Group, Transition Pinellas are real involved in growing your own food and being sustainable. And then that's our email if you had any questions or want to be chicken friends with us.
Chicken friends.
Chicken friends. Any questions?
And how much of the food do you provide yourself? In other words, what percentage would you say? 10%?
I would say it's about, it depends, certain times of the year. I'd say overall over the year it's like 50-50. Just depending on, they eat a lot of greens, but they like the greens. One thing, like if I want the girls to go to a certain part of the yard, like they love their little Cheerios and oatmeal and stuff like that, I buy them little goodies because I can let them out, I can kind of herd them to where I want them to be, and then all I have to do is like call them and shake a little bowl, and they know when it's Cheerio time, and they will go right back into the coop. I just shut the door, because chasing chickens is not fun. So it's good to train them with a goodie, because then you can get them to go where you want to go. So they get goodies, they know they're little goodies. But we, like I said, depending on the season, they love papaya, they love collard greens, they love kale. I can go up and down the alley and just pick anything that's soft and juicy looking, they'll typically like. And then between the bugs and the bug buckets and things like that. The neighbor that does the fishing, they'll eat fish scraps. They will catch lizards and mice. So they'll get really excited and cluck together, and they'll kind of shred whatever it is, which is kind of gross, but they are omnivores, so they'll eat a little bit of everything. So we give them a little bit of each.
Are there any plants that are specifically like poisonous for chickens?
Not that I know of.
I've not come across it,
I'm sure there's
I'm sure
something out
there
if you
are,
looked hard enough.
but honest to God, they eat everything.
They're smart enough to distinguish. too.
Yeah, I think usually
Yeah.
animals know what to eat and not eat. Yes,
You
ma'am.
mentioned that you could freeze eggs. I never done that. How do you do that?
You can take and separate the white and the yolk and freeze them that way, and supposedly they keep for up to a year, or you can scramble them. You don't want to hard boil them because they get a rubbery texture. We haven't stored them like that because we get so many fresh, but we
We
just
eat 'em.
kind of did the research so we could find out if we wanted to. But I guess, you buy egg beaters and stuff like that at the store, which is just the white, so it's the same idea.
You would just scramble them.
Yeah, if you wanted them
Put
whole.
it raw.
Yep, just freeze them raw, yeah.
Yep.
How long before you can start feeding them like other stuff?
Well, if you've got young ones, you got biddies, you need to keep them on their starter until they start laying. So in about 6 months, and that's when you change them.
But they
Now
can
they
eat
can
other-
still forage. I mean, they
Yeah.
can still eat grass and greens and that kind of thing. But as far as the regular feed, nutrition supplement, keep it to the starter.
Can you give them like any fruits or vegetables before them?
You
Or I
can.
can throw something
Yeah.
in there now. even
Yeah.
though they- Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
If they lose their tail feathers, is that the sign of mites, or is that possibly something else?
Mites, it's a common thing for the feather loss there. Yes, that's pretty common. And the other thing is, that packing order exists. A lot of times you'll have feather loss from other hens, especially if there's not a rooster around. A hen will play rooster. There'll be mounting and that kind of thing, and it actually, they'll pick feathers off.
Is boric acid dangerous to put like against mites?
Boric acid, I don't know about boric acid, just haven't used it. I've had real good luck with diatomaceous earth, and we stick with it.
I'm sure if you got online, like I said, there's so many chicken sites.
No.
Was this an inert substance, so I was wondering.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why it would be a problem. Especially you could certainly do it in the nesting boxes.
Yeah.
When you clean them out and then put the fresh material on top of it, I don't think it would be an issue.
We have about 30 chickens at the Faith House,
Mhm.
and somebody slipped us a rooster unbeknownst, so he's established in there, and there are really no neighbors immediately around that would be bothered. But there's an escapee, another rooster, an escapee from across the street, who's trying to enter the flock, and will the two roosters fight it out?
They generally, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've got a rooster in our neighborhood. I hear it crowing. I mean, they're around, but it's probably one of those fun feral guys. Feral, yeah. Yeah. Well, just like over in Ybor. I mean, have you been through Ybor? There's chickens running all over the place.
And some people, just like any other animal, they might be like a rooster. I don't know what to do with it, and they let it kind of to its
Yeah.
own devices too. So I think that happens sometimes.
On 13th Street North, just between 28th and 30th Avenue. There's a family, Papa Rooster, Mama Hen, and 7 chicks. And they walk every day, very casually, begging on the ground. And they're not afraid of anybody. They're
Oh, no.
having a good time. Go in everybody's yard and back to the sidewalk. But they're very smart. They don't stand.
Oh, yeah.
They just walk on the sidewalk. Up and down the sidewalk.
Yeah, they get their little routines. It's funny. They do. They get their little habits. And like I said, if, you know, my girls have, you know, they're used to their snacks. And if you break that routine, they
let you know it.
They
They get noisy,
Yeah.
they're clucking, they're walking over each other right at the door, you know, pacing. Give me my stuff. All right.
Thank you.
Where do you buy your chicken food?
Animal House has started carrying the organic stuff. We had
Yeah.
been picking some up in Gainesville as we went back and forth.
Yeah.
Gainesville, we used to get it at Latchwood Feed, you know, whenever we come down through there. But you can get it at Animal House, but anybody that gets the circular with the $5, it's $5 off coupon, isn't it? Yeah, just get the $5 off coupon and go there, and then you can get it for $37 a bag. It's still very steep, but it's no soy, no GMO, good stuff, really good stuff. It's a grain mill that's right outside of Swope, Virginia, that Joel Salatin uses for his flock up there. So it's excellent feed. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.